So Child's Play Part 1 was directed by Tom Holland and it was a pretty dark film. Part 2 goes in a slightly different direction, at least stylistically. It's way more colorful than its predecessor, it's more playful, it's camp and it knows that it is. And I think it's a brave sequel in that sense, because it's not afraid to go in a slightly different direction, to, try some new things. And I think it's a fan favorite. I think part 2, most of the people I know prefer part 2 over part 1 and also over part 3. And I think it's the most iconic film in the franchise for many reasons. But what is this about? This continues the story of poor little Andy, whose mother was brought to a mental facility because she talked about the possessed doll. And of course, the company who built the doll covered the whole thing up. They knew something was going on, but they covered it up. And so Andy gets moved to foster care. And, they find some foster parents for him. Yeah, of course, those parents aren't, the best parents in the world. There's his new father named Phil, who's the obligatory slasher film asshole. I think this actor is, by the way, very entertaining. I enjoy his performance a lot. Can't remember where I've seen him before. I think it was some 90s sitcom or something, and I'm pretty sure he also played an asshole in that one. So he's with his new foster parents, and poor little Andy. I mean, the guy's he has a sad life, a traumatic life, and I feel for him. I feel for he's a lovely little kid. Alex Vincent returns in the role, and I think he gained some acting skills. He's a few years older than in the first film, maybe 2 years older, 2 to 3 years. And I think he's pretty intense in his performance. I feel for him, as I said. His new foster parents already adopted another child, which is a teenager named Kyle. She's played by Christine Elise, who I already knew back in the day from 90210 and from season 2 of ER, I think, which was a great show, by the way. And she's great. Kyle, she's the rebellious teenager, and I think, she comes off as a little. She looks like she comes from alternative music or something, and I think this is a thing about the actress in real life. I think she's a little bit like that in real life. I'm not 100% sure, but I think she also has this attitude, this rebellious attitude about her. And I think the chemistry between Andy and Kyle is pretty intense. It's pretty great because, they're both abandoned children. They are both lost, and they both ended up in this situation with those horrible foster parents, and they form a bond with each other because of it. And they become like brother and sister in some sense, She becomes like his big sister, and I think this is one of the strongest aspects of this film. But the strongest aspect of this film is, of course, the doll itself. Brad Dourif returns in the role. His voice work in this film is over the top insane. He was great in part 1, but he really pushes things to the envelope in this one. And I think his performance is really crazy and highly entertaining in that sense. The practical effects are insane. I love them. I love how the look of the doll. I think this is the most iconic Chucky look of them all. I think this version of the doll was somehow the blueprint for what was about to come. I think they modeled future versions of the doll after this version, after this one, and it looks great. And what I forgot to mention in my review for part 1 is that the longer Charles Lee Ray, the killer, stays inside of the doll, the more human the doll becomes. Inside of the doll, he becomes, he gets flesh and blood and bones and stuff like that. And that's, of course, an excuse to make the film more bloody and more gruesome, and an excuse for more effects work. And they did a great job with that. There's this amazing finale inside of a doll factory, which looks so great. It's an amazing and also iconic set piece, and they are, like in part one, not able to kill the doll, so his hand got cut off, and they try to melt him at one point, and it gets really bloody because he got this flesh and bone structure inside of the doll, inside of his body, and yeah, it gets pretty gruesome, and great effects work. There's my favorite moment in the whole film, where he gets his hand cut off and he decides to push some knife blade into his wound, so he has a knife for a hand, and it looks so painful, and you can see bone structure and flesh and blood, and it's great. Amazing practical effects. And I think this film got his own style overall. I think that's because of the creator Don Mancini, who wrote this film and who wrote and directed future films of the franchise. This is his baby. And I mean, the guy's a stylish man himself, and I think that's important to him. And I think you can tell that he's behind a lot of the visuals in the film. It's interestingly lit, and there's interesting set pieces. The house where Andy lives with his foster parents looks interesting, and of course the doll factory is iconic. And yeah, those are iconic looks. And yeah, this film has its own style, and yeah, you have to respect that. As you know, fans are of this franchise are usually divided into two groups. Some people like the more over-the-top films like Chucky's Baby and stuff like that, and some like the more basic slasher films, let's say. And I'm definitely one of those guys. I think it was a little too much in terms of silliness and in terms of camp with some of the later films and even the TV show. I enjoyed season 1, but I think it got pretty ridiculous with season 2. I respect that. It's Don Mancini. He always swamps between those two things. He gets very silly and he gets a little darker with the next film, and I respect it. But I like those basic slasher films, and I think part 2 is one of those. It balances those elements. There's a lot of camp in there, as I said, but it still is a down-to-earth slasher film, the way I enjoy them. And it balances those things well. And it's a slasher. It's maybe a basic slasher film, but a very creative and stylistically unique one, let's say. So do yourself a favor, if you haven't seen this in a while, give it a rewatch, or watch it if you haven't ever seen it. It's a very entertaining film. Thank you for watching, and see you very soon.